welcome to Neo Chats. Good to be back. And this week we've got a special guest from Ireland. Name is Declan Sweeney. Hi, Declan.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Not too bad. Just enjoying as we were chatting, the increasingly dark mornings and getting prepared for the clocks to go back.
Exactly. Dark winter's on the way.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, we're both in the north, so we get the best of it.
We get the best of it, yeah. We're well used to it.
So Declan, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today, I mean, you're co-founder, director of Campus Connect, but in a second we'll get into what that is, because it's actually really pretty interesting. I don't actually find that many organizations operating in this specific niche, But the interesting thing I wanted to start off asking you about is that your route into this, because I noticed you were program manager, program director, lecturer, working firmly on the academic side, and then you just suddenly went into this side of things. And I just wondered, what was it that led you to Campus Connect, and what is it in a nutshell that you guys are doing?
Yeah, I jumped to the dark side from I was working I suppose my background was originally in EFL. I worked as an English language teacher. I spent the best part of 10 years working overseas, teaching English to international students. Really enjoyed it. It was dynamic, interesting. When we were based in London at the time, myself and my now wife, Nessa, and I got a job working in HE, working on a kind of a pathway programmer, sort of supporting international students into higher education and universities in the UK, which was really good. I was looking after everything from sort of English language skills to kind of academic skills to cultural awareness, all that type of stuff. So sort of, it was all preparatory. So students would arrive and they'd have maybe like a 6-week or 6-month or even a 12-month kind of period where they would upskill until they're sort of ready to start their degree program. One of the things I suppose I noticed at that time was how much I suppose students didn't know before they arrived. There was quite a stark sort of onboarding process. Subsequently, I was working for the University of Bedfordshire, and I was looking after their orientation programs. And I suppose that, it was clear, not just for international students, but also for domestic students, that that whole onboarding and transition was very difficult for students to manage. And so much of student success is based on that kind of critical period, and they're kind of settling into university life. So we had some students who just were so lost for that first period. They needed so much support, and I felt there was kind of a missed opportunity before they left. There were 6, 8 months, 12 months before they actually started, where there wasn't really that much happening. And it was kind of, once they arrived, then like every academic will talk about the orientation, it's just they're bombarded with information just for that 2 weeks. It's just, it's rabbit in the headlight stuff. You just wonder how much value there is in some of the things that happen. Everybody's rushing to get their say, to point to different services and stuff, but the student can't remember. It's just too much. It's overload. So I suppose that was kind of that was what was happening on the ground. And like, while it was challenging, I really enjoyed it. And I probably would have stayed in that space. But as things happen, my wife had an opportunity to move back to Ireland. We had a 6-month-old, and that was it. We just decided it was an opportunity she got offered a job, and it was kind of close to where we're originally from. We thought, this was an opportunity to come back, live back where we grew up, close to family and so on. So we took the leap of faith. And that's when I decided, right, I need to look, how can I take what I've learned and the skills that I've acquired in HE and, look at something in a kind of a commercial. I always liked the idea of working for myself, and we had been sort of toying around with a couple of ideas, but it kind of moved things forward more quickly. And there was a program here in the northwest of Ireland through Enterprise Ireland where you could essentially you had a 6 to 9 month window to test ideas.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the start. So it just give you a platform to, it covered sort of your expenses, and you could go and test some ideas. And that was the start.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fantastic idea. I mean, I've been the same. I mean, I've worked as a sort of institutional academic director, so I was the guy tasked with things like, okay, how do we onboard students as they come in? And it's true that, some of the ways that I remember, originally seeing that the limit of it was the limit of the creativity that I saw was that let's turn it into a quiz. So we'll bombard them with information and then we'll quiz them on, okay, so where are the photocopiers and where are the snack machines?
Yeah.
It's, as you say, I mean, it's just what is the value in this, and then you see other institutions just trying different stuff that just, gradually, bit by bit, just making sure there's a support network around, and it's so much more effective because, as you say, rabbit in the headlights, people are coming in, they're just adjusting to the new surroundings, their new social situation, their new peer group, the reality of this new phase of their life, and they are just not listening to the stuff that's getting thrown at them. So what I really like and what I really note is that all of this stuff, when you're talking about it firmly planted in the student experience. Not once yet have you mentioned the life cycle, from marketing, about extending the life cycle, about student retention, all that kind of stuff, which is obviously part of it. But I'm getting the feeling that this was obviously the commercial sort of byproduct of it that makes it interesting to institutions. But for you, your motivation was you saw this happening and you said there's a better way to do that, and that seems to be firmly what your motivation was.
We struggled initially with the commercial. We had, I suppose there was a problem there. It was clearly a problem. Any institution I spoke to, this was an issue. Onboarding, transitioning was an issue. But how do you go from there to some? It still has to work on a commercial sense as well. It has to make sense. It has to make business sense to do. Otherwise, I suppose what we learned pretty quickly is, it's unless there's a business model to work with, the thing will never work. With the best will in the world, we can't impact if we don't have a viable business model that we can implement. So what I found was, when I went to the first institutions, international was a good starting point. I pitched to a lot of I contacted the international offices and just talked to the directors. That was it. That was all we had at the beginning, was that I feel there's something we can do here. And there was the University of Limerick, there was Josephine Page, and she, this was something they were discussing as well. So it kind of resonated. We came in, we started kicking around some ideas, and we came up with the very first sort of version, which is so different. People say, where did you come up with the idea? I didn't come up with the idea. We found the problem and we started toying with solutions. And the first instance of the service was, it was a very simple platform where an international, we had to pick a spot as well in terms of the student life cycle. And for me, it was that sort of post-application through to when the student, or even into that first term. And the first iteration was content, like it was mostly kind of preparatory type content, but within a couple of weeks of launching, straight away you realize, okay, there's something, the students are really keen, not just to consume the content, but they want to see who else. They were looking for people.
Yeah.
And that was then where we're going, while the content is important, perhaps there's more of a lean towards kind of peer-to-peer. And this is probably pre-Unibuddy. This is probably 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
And peer-to-peer wasn't really a thing, bar having some sort of, a peer buddy when you come on campus. So
yeah.
The student feedback was, yes, we like the videos, and UL's a wonderful campus, like it's fantastic, but the students were just really keen to connect with other people. That was it.
Yeah.
So that was the first kind of point where I thought, okay, there is something really interesting here. But the next challenge was, at that point, universities in general in the sector weren't ready for putting their students first. So actually having their students out in front and talking to, or allowing students to converse with each other, because there was kind of there was a fear that they were losing control in terms of being able to control the message, and what if you know, the things, somebody says something. And so we had to be a little bit careful. We couldn't sort of go all in, all guns blazing. We had to obviously provide a rationale for doing it, and then to be quite measured in how we gradually built out that side of the service.
It's really interesting thinking about that, I mean, for me, yes, it would be something that I imagine students before they come having had some kind of soft introduction to each other, or at least even, you know, being able to see who is in the peer group, so that they can actually visualize this and start to imagine, you know, feeling part of this new group is just such a, you know, let's not understate how important that is. I wonder, don't you think that it's maybe a sign of, you know, I often think in academia or in education in general, a lot of the way we're going to see progress in key areas is by institutions learning to let go of that, you know, that need to control everything. And I understand, you know, the idea of the marketing department, of course, controlling tone and message, but that's of the stuff they put out. But in the end, in the digital space, you can't control, you know, you can't control everything at all. No. I mean, do you find that there's been a shift there at all? I mean, are institutions gradually beginning to say we might allow students to get out in front, you know, and take the control mechanisms away?
Yeah, I think the what I found over time is that in the beginning it was, you know, we couldn't. There was what they were sort of happy to, or they felt was, if they pushed like a student ambassador or somebody who represented the institution, but was it was a little bit prescriptive, but this person has been vetted, so they can talk on our behalf. And that was kind of probably the first step, and that still is the case on many of those peer-to-peer platforms. That you've got somebody. The problem I found was it becomes too prescriptive. They become almost like a semi-staff member, and the students are aware of that. They know that this person is being, you know, it's. So what we found was there's still value in it, and I'm not going to say that there's not, but I think the real value for an incoming student is if I'm a domestic or an international student and I'm traveling to University X, what I'm really looking for is somebody like me. I want somebody who's in the same position as me. So somebody who is perhaps considering the same program, traveling, perhaps from the same area even, and I'd like to connect with them for that type of peer reassurance. And I believe that's an authentic, you know, and if I can connect with that person, they say, yes, I'm making this choice because of A, B, and C. And we both agree, this looks like a good choice. That's so much more powerful than anything, you know, a paid ambassador can talk about. Yeah. And yes, there will be some, you know, students who will say negative things, but my perception, like, that's going to happen anyway. It's going to happen. I think universities are aware of that now. Like, you might as well have some control over how you respond to it, and at least have a mechanism where you can actually have it flagged instead of trying to run away from it and pretend it doesn't happen. Like, it will. It's going to happen anyway. We're not changing that.
And it'll be more positive association with the institution if they're the ones providing the mechanisms for that. Surely, I mean, absolutely. If a student has to go out and find their own connections on social media and stuff, I mean, that must have an impact. I mean, how does it actually work, Declan? I mean, what you know, a Campus Connect, is it, you know, it seems to me it's like a forum, in a sense, a closed forum managed by the university, but I mean, I imagine there's more to it than that.
Yeah. So, and again, this is from several iterations, and each cycle we sometimes, you know, with institutions we change a little bit in terms of positioning and so on. We tried pre-application. It was just too untidy. It's too chaotic. So it's post-application, and what happens is the institution we create like an instance of the service for each of the institutions. So it's branded. So it's University of Limerick Campus Connect, and like Bangor University Campus Connect, and Liverpool John Moore Campus Connect. So the students have their own, and they identify with that university. They receive typically at the offer stage, they'll get a message and say, congratulations on your offer, to connect with other students who are also, you know, planning to study at X. You download this app. So they click and they fill out some information, and then they download it onto a device. And What we do, the key things that we capture really are once we have their subject area and we have where they're from, we can start to then create great networks. So you can start to, if I'm a student who's interested in doing biological sciences at UCC, it'll connect me with other students who are also who have an offer for the same subject. And what we'll do then is we group them. So subject area is probably the top. That's the one the students call out for most. Is there somebody else from my subject area? The second part then is there someone from my region? So somebody coming from the northwest of Ireland. I'd love to connect with somebody from the northwest of Ireland who's considering going. And again, we'll group those together. We can spin up a group and pull them in. And then you can pepper it then with things like current students who are also from that area, or current students who are also studying biological sciences, and so on and so forth. So you start to create these kind of networks. And what's really interesting in the last 12 months is how valuable the data has become in terms of, because what we're getting now is we're getting visibility on sort of community engagement. We're starting to see the number of connections that an incoming applicant makes and what sort of bearing that has in terms of overall progression, and it's not rocket science. Students who connect with peers before they start are more likely to progress because it's going to get tough. And if you've got a good network and you've got friends, you're more likely to succeed. So
retention. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? I wondered where the key sort of business case would hit, whether it be retention or whether it would be word of mouth, marketing for future prospective students. But I mean, retention is the big issue for a lot of universities, isn't it?
Yeah, it's conversion probably in the first. We find that the team typically with an institution will start maybe with a recruitment admissions, because we're in that funny space that some universities kind of hand off at the post-application stage and moves into admissions. So we're often, one of the first questions we say, who looks after students from the post-application phase through, because that's the window of where we impact. Like that's where we sit. And for us, it's about conversion in the first instance. So the number of offer holders, obviously the university are responsible in terms of directing students into this pathway. Once they're in the pathway, then we create the networks and community. We're bringing them together. The students sometimes suggest who else they want to connect with. We spin up new groups. We can kind of, the universities then will moderate certain groups and so on, but we've different arrangements with different institutions. But for us, for an example would be, typically we'd have about sort of 70% conversion from that post-application through to enrollment. So it's very high.
How does that compare with pre-intervention before you guys came along?
It's hard to say sort of overall, but outside of Campus Connect, it's less than half. So
wow. That's significant.
Yeah. It's significant. So our business case is you need to drive more applicants through this pathway if you want to have if you want more enrollment. So the business case is there and it's very, very strong. It needs to be strategically, you need to look at the whole process and how you actually signpost students, because there is a shift for the universities. And I don't sort of pretend this is sort of a magic, you roll it out and off it goes. You do have to ensure that all the team are bought in and we're signposting all the students where we can into this pathway, because that's where you can get the most, that's where the universities have the biggest sort of role to play. One, then the networking is we can flag people who look like they're wobbling based on sort of the engagement with their subject groups and how many peers they've connected with.
Interesting. Okay.
And so on.
That's of real high value. And what I'm wondering from there is, obviously, clearly, okay, so straight away you've got this, pre-enrollment connection with your group. And originally, I admit, I looked at this model and I thought, I wonder if there's a risk of people getting into these kind of cultural bubbles, by getting connected by region and things. But the reality is, as soon as you hit campus, it all opens up anyway. So it's really just about providing that security before they come, isn't it?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because this came up recently. We've done some work with UCC, University College Cork. We start with an international deployment. One of the benefits of the approach, or it's interesting that it works much better with volume. And with a greater diversity of cohorts, because if we we run a pilot, for example, with an international intake. Within that international pool, they don't have answers to all the questions because they're a group of perhaps Indian students and they're asking questions about Ireland. We need the domestic cohort and we need some overlap, some intersections where the students can actually find answers to questions between the different cohorts. They will still pool into their regional groups, but they need to step outside of that to find answers to other questions. And that's what's an opportunity then to really integrate them. The students actually don't like, in the first instance, they will pool in their regional groups, but then they're looking to expand beyond that. And if you close it off at that point, there's often a little bit of frustration where the feedback is, it's been great to connect with people from my home country. I've connected with a few people from my subject, also from India, but where are the local students? Where are the, where are the EU students? Where are the postgrads, etc.? So
because that's what people want, isn't it? I mean, they want to go and have an experience beyond where they're from. And I imagine what I'm seeing is then that as they shift into these other groups, I guess, some of which are moderated by the university, the areas where they're able to ask questions and get a rapid response from peers. So instead of what you were talking about at the beginning with this kind of the university throwing all this information at them, they're able to establish a sense of psychological safety first by finding a peer group and then move on to actually being the protagonists in the information that they acquire, which is obviously means they're going to remember it because they're asking the questions that they want answered and they're getting the answers. So when they arrive, they must be ready to go. I mean, informed, connected.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the volume of interactions is phenomenal. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of interactions between applicants before they start. So engagement is off the scale, and particularly at undergrad level. I think that demographic, they really go for it. The opportunity to find people is and to be able to make connections and so on is wonderful. And we find then that some of the universities now would have a Campus Connect, face-to-face event. When they arrive on campus, because they've already met each other. They've had this engagement over months, and then when they're on campus, they will obviously they've already got these kind of relationships. So it's just the university might set up sort of a welcome Campus Connect event or something like that, which is great.
So what is the sort of follow through there? Because I mean, I imagine undergrads, they're coming from from high school into university. The questions, they want to know everything because they're, it's worrisome. It's a big shift for them, apart from obviously the mature students, but at your sort of postgrad executive education level, whatever, I imagine that the focus is a lot more on networking because you're already thinking about, I need to build my professional community. And I mean, where does Campus Connect sit at different stages of the student journey? I mean, I don't know if it exists or if there's plans for example, so far you've taken us up to just into the start of term, I guess, where you've got a Campus Connect face-to-face event, which is a nice transition into the real thing. What about afterwards? I mean, is there a kind of, does it exist or is there plans for a sort of alumni network to keep them in there?
Yeah, it's a good question. We find that at the international and postgrad level, there is they want to see the things like the employability opportunities and so on. What's interesting is within each cycle, and this was again something we kind of was more by accident than by design, you start to see the patterns at the end of each cycle. And by cycle, I mean an incoming cohort, from post application through to when they enroll. About 30 to 40% of the students will say, I want to stay on here.
Right.
I want to give back. I'm willing to. We saw this pattern where students would tell us that they were happy to stay on. So we thought this is a great opportunity because what this means is each cycle we're building more value in terms of the number of people in the network. Because the first time when you start with a new institution, the pool is quite shallow. You don't have many. You can't sort of go very, very granular because you could create a group and there's only one or two students. But once you sort of run a couple of cycles, suddenly the pool is deeper. And now we've got alumni who are in the biological sciences group. We've got 2 alumni in there. Now their availability is slightly different and we're still trying to work that out. And we need to kind of coordinate a little bit with the institution and with the alumni office to say, this person isn't going to be available around the clock to just answer questions, but they will come on for a kind of a live Q&A at different times and so on.
Wow.
And that's worked. That's what's really interesting is, you can, and each cycle the value increases, and these people continue to give back, which is phenomenal. It's completely voluntary, and we're not asking them, and we're kind of sidestepping the traditional ambassador a little bit, because there is space for ambassadors, but they tend to act more as facilitators, and bringing people together instead of being the person to answer the questions. So now I'm, as an ambassador, I know that you're looking for a graduate from biological sciences. Actually, this guy here, let me check if he's available, and I can bring the two of you together, which is wonderful.
Yeah. This is so much stronger than an ambassador, it sounds. I mean, this is organically somebody having arrived at the conclusion without any kind of external pressure or the incentive of, this role or that title. I just want to help. I mean, you can't put value on that.
We always say that the value, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a community, and the greatest measure of success, obviously universities are looking at conversion, they're going to look, but for us the greatest measure of success is how many people are willing to give back, because you only give back if you've had a positive experience yourself.
Absolutely.
And if 30 or 40% come back and say, I want to help somebody like me, I want to tell them what's ahead, etc., then fantastic, really, really positive. And I think one of the challenges though is, the network grows, the community gets bigger. There is an element of, I have this discussion with the universities. There's a management role there. There's a lot of value. You've got a lot of peer promoters and people for all sorts of stuff, but they need to also to be supported and to be kept engaged. So that at the moment is a challenge. We need, and something we can't do on our own. We need the institutions to work with us on that.
But it's a nice kind of problem for the institutions.
It's a very
what
nice
are we going
problem
to do with all this organic engagement? I mean, oh my goodness, that's such an issue. I mean, they'll come up with stuff, I'm sure, to kind of raise visibility, or as you say, to reward and to give back to those people that are giving so much to their community.
Absolutely.
And do you find that, I mean, did you find quite an upswing in interest, just to sort of I know we've got limited time here, just really interested about the pandemic, and the sudden shift to online. So what you've got is a community here that already promotes a sense of community online, which must have been invaluable during that sudden shift to, very disorienting shift away from campus sessions. Did you find that there was an uptick of interest around that time?
I think at that time, the thing that I noticed most was not that the phone was ringing and there's lots of people, because that doesn't happen in HE. It's not. But what the first sort of real where we thought, wow, was the teams we were working with. They were, Declan, can we do this? Can we organize this? Can we do this? We really need this now. This is great. Can we, and the students were engaging with it a lot more because there were fewer face-to-face opportunities. Right. So I think while in the beginning it was a little bit sort of, peripheral, if that makes sense. It wasn't sort of, suddenly we became much more centralized for the institution. Suddenly it was, this is, we're directing more cohorts through this. We're going, it just became a more important part of their strategy. And it was really because that's what students were looking for. So
it's fantastic. I mean, it's such a great idea. And I'm absolutely blown away by the figures you're talking about the engagement. And it's just, in a way, it's very simple. The principle. I mean, it's very simple, but of course, what I also appreciate is that you're, openly acknowledging all the challenges you get as you grow, because, we're always thinking about the next stage, aren't we? And then suddenly it opens up, and then like, oh, right, okay, we've actually got so many people now. How do we do this? And each level reveals new challenges, and it's great that you're discussing that openly with the universities, which seems like it was like that from inception. How can we co-create a solution? I don't have all the answers. I'm not coming in with a know-it-all sales pitch. I'm coming in with an opportunity. And we do see institutions implement it slightly different, and that's interesting as well. We don't prescribe a particular. We say, we share
across all the institutions that we've seen, these guys are doing this, it works really well. I think you should try it.
Yeah.
You know, a team will try something different. It may not work. And that's just, and it depends on resources, personnel, how they feel about it. You know, some people, community is still a little bit of a, you know, will this work? And why would a student, you know, some people ask me, will an undergrad student join a community before they start? You know,
yes.
you get, there's still a reluctance or a kind of a,
yeah.
So we've a bit way to go, I feel, but that's,
as you say, I mean, it's not just about a deeper pool of students in particular institutions, it's a deeper cross section, isn't it? And as you go with each iteration and each cycle and each new application of what you're doing in different institutions, it's going to get to a point where it's, I mean, for me, it's quite obvious how successful it could be, but I think it's going to be unquestionable very shortly with the amount of cases. And how can institutions get in touch with you? I mean, where can they see more about this? Yeah,
we're on we're www.campusconnect.ie. I'm on LinkedIn. We're actually running 2 workshops next month with the IC Global Cafe, which is on community building among applicant cohorts. The dates, I think, are the 11th. I'll just need to double check the dates. Just on social channels, and if people want to come and attend one of the workshops, as I say, some of the principles as well don't necessarily involve any solution. You know, you can apply them across other social channels as well, on good community building practice and so on. So
brilliant. Well, please send the dates when you have them. It'd be great to share that with our network as well. And super interesting idea, and more needed than ever before, I think, right now. So
thank you very much, Mark. It's good to talk.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much for your time, Declan.
You're welcome. Take care.
You
Thanks.
too.